Again, I emphasize family integration here because it is surprisingly such a foreign concept to even solid Christian families in every other category besides that God expects all of his people to gather and to worship him. Even saying the word family integration sounds like we are doing something unique, like we are doing something special or particular, which I think is misleading. Families that worship God together on the Lord's Day are not doing anything special or particular insofar as it's unique and extra biblical. They are doing as God's people have done throughout all time, that as you read the Bible, you're just going to continually see, and they all gathered, and they all congregated, and they all gathered, and they all did this, and you will never find a single text, not even a half of a text, that identifies that the children then left to go do something else. The people who are doing something special, and I would argue not especially good, and I mean that even speaking of very well-meaning brothers and sisters, pastors and churches, but I don't think this is a particular good practice, are the ones who are doing something unique. Put simply, family segregated worship. Really, I think the categories here should just be normal worship and then segregated worship. I think that's how it should rather be understood. We've been so enculturated into thinking families are meant to segregate on the Lord's Day. We think some should worship God as God commanded, hearing the preached word, singing psalms, practicing catechism or sound doctrine, praying as a corporate body, participating in the sacraments, and put most simply, congregating, ecclesia, the church that is to assemble into God's presence to worship him, while others should do a wide array of other things removed from the actual covenant people of God, doing the very things that we are designed and commanded to do as a church. Whereas this would be the norm throughout basically all of church history, which is an argument I use very sparingly. I really don't like to speak of church history arguments because it's so hard to actually assemble church history arguments. So that argument usually packs too big of a punch beyond what we could prove. But really, I can't find anything akin to it throughout church history, to segregate families all over the place on a campus or in a building. Our church sticks out like a sore thumb in the postmodern age, even among good Christian families. And I really do mean they're good Christian families. This is really a tragedy with little to no biblical merit, and its fruits, and this is the most frightening part, are horrendous. As the past few generations have abandoned the faith of their parents and churches at the highest numbers that I have heard, and I am an ignorant man, but I have ever heard in church history as well, all while living in the easiest time to be a Christian, during the easiest time to gather as a church in climate-controlled areas without fear of persecution, driving here with AC, blasting us with a car that has the power of 300 horses. We have snacks and coffee. We have plumbed restrooms, and on and on. There's never been an easier time to gather as God's people and to worship him as one. Now, raising children is hard, but a great blessing, and it is the command of God for our good. Having children participate and be present in the worship of God with God's people is hard. No one is saying it is not, but a great blessing. It's one that stills the avenger, Psalm 8:2 says, especially in the long run. And it is the command of God for our good. Parents subject their children to the liturgies of a Padre game. I see it all the time. I go to many Padres games by God's grace. They subject their children to the liturgies of a golf day, the liturgy of hours upon hours of school instruction and enculturation, the liturgy of going to the movies, the liturgy of 4-year-old soccer games, which I would wager are a much more chaotic and difficult thing than a couple hours service. And on the list goes of things that parents willingly bring their children into and have them participate in that liturgy from start to finish, which the word liturgy just means the work of the people. What are they gathering there to do? Yet when it comes to the church, which by definition means the gathered people, and we gather to worship God, that is the work that we are coming to do here, and worship is work. It's not merely a passive participation, but an active one. Many segregate at that time and they call it good. Christianity is far more than merely gaining intellectual knowledge, which is often the argument for segregating families. Folks say the children would learn better in a classroom away from everyone else, and the parents would learn better if the children were not in the rows. And to that argument, I'll actually say, sure. If all we are gathering here is for intellectual information, then sure, that's a reasonable argument. But that is not what worship is. We do worship God with our mind, yes and amen, but we also worship him with our soul, with our heart, with our strength. If it be about information, I would concede, but worship is about far more. We participate not merely with mind, but heart, soul, and strength. And the heart, soul, and strength are what preeminently are shaped on the Lord's Day as we worship. Even the most disciplined, attentive person in here will not remember certain sentences of the sermon, or maybe a few. I don't remember a few sentences from the sermon by Tuesday. That's not why we're gathering here. That's not the preeminent reason. Information is not our chief aim, but worshiping God and being shaped, heart, soul, strength, and yes, mind, in the worship of God.